A Fox News interview, that for some reason lights up this whole thing again, and he's being investigated. And you have to wonder if was under the Obama administration, because he went on Fox News and talked about it, is this some kind of retribution? If he'd gone on CNN and talked about it, would it be the same thing? I don't know, but it's really curious that now after 7 years,
the timing is curious.
Yeah.
Joining me now is retired Brigadier General Tony Tata, also the author of the new book, The Dark Winter. Thank you for being here with me. Now, I want to talk about the former Special Forces soldier Matt Golsteyn. He was once lauded as a hero, and he's now facing charges of premeditated murder in connection with the 2010 killing of a suspected Taliban bomb maker. Now, there are a lot of things that we don't know about this case, that we wouldn't have access or privilege to that information. But I would imagine that those who have served, who are serving in the military, who have loved ones in the military, have a different perspective on this case. I mean, this is kind of eye-opening, isn't it?
Well, Stephanie, the facts are what really matter here, and we don't know all the facts. And only Matt Golsteyn really knows what happened, and maybe a couple other folks. But he was a Special Forces A-team leader in the southern part of Afghanistan. He had some Marines on his team as well that were combat engineers, and 2 of them were killed by an IED, an improvised explosive device. And just like I used to do, just like every commander who loves his troops or her troops would do, he went after and found this bomb maker, found bomb making materials in this Afghan combatant's house, and they detained him. And they brought him back for questioning. And this is where the story gets a little murky. I know that what should have happened was the commander at that base should have processed the detainee for detention all the way up to Bagram, which is in the northern part of Afghanistan, because there are 2 standards on a detainee. One is the individual a threat? The other is, does the individual have current intelligence value that can help coalition force operations? Obviously, this guy had both. He was a threat because he was a bomb maker, and he also had current intel. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. And you have to remember, this was 2010, Obama years. You had Manning releasing stuff around this time onto WikiLeaks. You had all kinds, the intelligence community writ large was just consumed with lots of different things. You had Obama trying to soften the rules for detainees because of the Gitmo and the scandals that happened in Abu Ghraib way back in Iraq and all that. So the intelligence community was under a little bit of pressure at this time, and I think it was dysfunctional. And I think this is what happened, is that he had nowhere to give the detainee. And so where the story diverges now is what happened from that point when the incompetence, Stan McChrystal was in charge at the time of the forces. He later got relieved by Obama, and the incompetence of the chain of command there was this guy available to be processed? Did anybody take him and question him? And so Golsteyn did one of 2 things, according to the 2 stories. His attorney's story is that he released him, and several minutes, hours later, the individual was killed in an ambush. And Golsteyn should have released him, because up to the 3rd day, you had 3 days to either process the individual or to release them. Or there's an alternative story that Golsteyn murdered the individual.
Well, didn't he say in a Fox News interview in 2016 that he did murder this individual?
Well, he said he killed the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so killing in combat is what you do.
Did you kill the Taliban bomb maker?
Yes.
And so if he killed the individual in an ambush, that's perfectly legitimate. Mm-hmm. If he held a pistol to his head while he was handcuffed, that's murder, and that's a violation of the Geneva Conventions.
Yeah.
And that's where his attorney calls that story, the murder story, a fantasy. And of course, it happened in 2010. He was investigated in 2011. The military did not see fit to prosecute or charge him in 2011. They did take administrative action against him by removing his Silver Star and removing his Special Forces tab that he had earned, both of which he had earned.
And I think it's important to look at what they're calling this Taliban bomb maker. So he was a suspected bomb maker. Some are just calling him just this random Afghan man who was killed and murdered in cold blood, and that Golsteyn's a cold-blooded killer. So a lot of facts, like you said, show that there was maybe a reason behind killing him. You're saying that the process maybe wasn't executed properly.
Yeah, Stephanie, this guy was an enemy combatant. He was found with bomb-making materials all around him. There was evidence to show that he had participated in the explosion that killed the 2 Marines. There's no question that the mainstream media can water this down as much as they want to.
Yeah.
But I'd like to put them in that Humvee that killed the 2 Marines and see how they feel about it, and see whether or not they agree that this guy is just some random Afghan citizen that was has been wronged, or whether or not he's an enemy combatant that was killing U.S. soldiers, sailors, airmen.
Yeah,
Marines.
I wanted to read you 2 headlines. One from NBC. It says Army Major Matthew Golsteyn was charged with premeditated murder for killing an Afghan man in 2010. The New York Post writes Trump praises Green Beret who's charged with the rogue killing of an Afghan man. So again, they want to blur this
Right.
line
He's an enemy
between
combatant,
bomb maker
Right.
and just random Afghan man.
Right, exactly. And it does a real disservice to the entire public to call him just some random Afghan man. He was a detainee that was captured post IED blast that killed 2 great Marines, U.S. Marines, and then the system failed Matt Golsteyn and his team because they didn't process him properly at the base camp. Golsteyn should have never had anything to do with this guy. They brought him in, and they should have turned him over. The intelligence, military intelligence community should have then had him for interrogation and then processed him up to Bagram. And Golsteyn should have never seen this guy again. And instead, he's left holding the bag, literally, and has to deal with this guy. And what happened is, only Golsteyn and a few others know truly what happened. And I wrote a piece for Fox News that the president tweeted about this, as you know, and he said, hey, I'm going to be reviewing this case. And what he's doing, I think, is putting the DOD on notice that, look, this happened in 2010 under the Obama administration. 2011, he got some administrative punishment. And now, 2016, after a Fox News interview, that for some reason lights up this whole thing again, and he's being investigated. And you have to wonder if was under the Obama administration, because he went on Fox News and talked about it, is this some kind of retribution? If he'd gone on CNN and talked about it, would it be the same thing? I don't know, but it's really curious that now, after 7 years,
the timing is curious.
Yeah, and so I think the president was right to say, and he's not exerting undue command influence. You've seen all these articles saying, "Oh, he's way out of his lane."
Well,
he's
anything
not.
that the president does, everyone
That's right.
has to.
And that's why I wrote the article,
side.
because the people need to understand the commander-in-chief can do whatever he wants with regard to Uniform Code of Military Justice and Manual for Courts-Martial, and he has not stepped in either direction on this. He just said, I'm going to review the case.
Yeah.
And that puts on notice these prosecutors. You got to understand, prosecutors are going to come after him with fangs, Golsteyn.
Well, Golsteyn deserves due process.
That's
and I
right.
think that, as somebody who's served in the military, you would probably see this as, wow, we have a commander-in-chief that is willing to come out here, get involved, and actually defend one of our military, one of our heroes.
Right.
And actually go out there and take all this criticism. I think it's important that our military men and women feel supported.
That's
and
right.
they know that if they're out there putting their lives on the line, that they're going to be defended when they get home. That they're not. I mean, Golsteyn is facing life behind bars and possibly the death penalty. This is very serious, and all eyes are on what's happening with this case. And I mean, now we're all watching. And as you said, all of these people have been put on notice.
Yeah, and he's got monumental legal bills now. He's fighting the ultimate City Hall in the Pentagon, and who has legions of lawyers that are going to come after him and tag on every kind of lesser charge known to man, and he'll have 10 charges against him that he's got to fight and refute. And what the president is doing is shining some sunlight on this, because this smacks of a little bit of retribution of a guy. Again, 2010, 2011. He gets administrative. This is handled administratively.
Yeah.
And now, because he goes on Fox News, he's back. Now they're putting the screws to him, and you just have to wonder. And so I'm glad that the president said, okay, let me turn a little sunshine on this and make sure that you cross every T and dot every I as you're going. And he left his tweet neutral enough to say, look, if there's something really bad here, he's going to review it, and if it's bad, then so be it. But he's standing behind the DOD and the military and the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that go out there and fight for us every day.
At that time in 2010, was there anything different that changed when it came to the rules of engagement? So is there something that maybe changed, like, that we should know about?
Well, the Obama administration tightened the screws on rules of engagement, and you had to, back when I was Deputy Commanding General of all the troops in Afghanistan.
Or let's say this happened not during the Obama administration.
Well, so if it happened today, what happened on the ground, I don't know exactly what happened on the ground. So it had one of two things happen. But in general, rules of engagement were much more loose for commanders under Trump than they were under Obama. And so I don't know that the rules of engagement would have impacted this case specifically, because you really have the law of land warfare. If he's a combatant, you have certain protocols, or a detainee, you have certain protocols you must follow. If he's in the wild and he's an enemy combatant, which he was, then he's fair game, and it's game on. And if he walks into an ambush and gets killed, then that's on him, and that's good for the United States.
And you were, in your article, you said in 2006 and 2007, this was the same unit that served with you during a tour. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the 3rd Special Forces Group is a famed group, out of Fort Bragg, and they're just awesome young men and women that come over and serve our nation in very austere conditions, and they operate in these A teams that go out as every person on the team, 10, 11, 12 people of whatever their strength is. They're all multi-skilled, and they can do the communications, they can do the medical piece, they can be the sniper, and they do direct action missions. They do foreign internal defense training of the Afghan National Forces. They do a full spectrum of missions, and they really do a lot. They're the quintessential small package that does a lot of good things. You get a lot of bang for your buck out of a Special Forces A team.
And I want to go back to something that you touched on, this Fox News interview in 2016. And again, the timing of everything is rather curious. So would you say, or would you agree with me on the fact that maybe if he didn't do this Fox News interview in 2016, we wouldn't even be talking about this case today?
No, I think that's pretty obvious. And now whether or not he needed to go on national TV and talk about this and bring attention to it, that's probably something he's reassessing personally right now. But whether or not it warranted the DOD now reopening the investigation is another thing, because I'm sure what he told the CIA polygraph agent and what he told the Army during the first investigation has not changed from what he said on Fox News.
Yeah.
And so why now investigate him for a crime when he's already been through this process?
When he was applying for a position with the CIA. And
that's right.
I think that if you know that you did something wrong and you know that you're going to have to take a polygraph test, you probably wouldn't jump into that situation if you think that you committed a crime, or if you were a murderer.
Right. By all accounts, this is
you can't get away with that, right?
Stephanie, by all accounts, this is a great American who did our nation's bidding for us and was given a very challenging case to deal with because of the dysfunctional military system of handling detainees. And he dealt with it in one of two ways, and we're going to find out whether or not he dealt with it properly or improperly. And it smacks a little bit of the Allen West case. If you remember back, Bill O'Reilly took this on back in the mid-2000s. Allen West, former congressman, two of his soldiers had been killed by IEDs. He was a commander in Iraq, and he held a pistol to a detainee's head, the bomb maker, and yelled at him and said, confess, confess, tell me where these people are, because you feel that emotion. Those of us that have been in combat and love our troops and they're gone all of a sudden, you just want to be able to put them back together and send them home all in one piece. And I'll tell you, Allen West was prosecuted for doing that because that was a violation of the Geneva Conventions. He turned out okay for Allen. He ran for Congress and won, and now he's doing just fine. But this is a little bit like that, in that it's now got national attention. Fox News is covering it, and all the other media outlets are covering it. And so I'm just, I'm prayerful that, Matt Golsteyn and his family come through this okay.
And how would you compare the media treatment of Golsteyn versus a Bo Bergdahl or Chelsea Manning?
Yeah, well, the media and Obama, the Chelsea Manning was, commuted by Obama, and then Bergdahl, received the same kind of treatment, and now Obama has his DOD, Six's DOD on this hero, we think, and the media has really fawned over Manning and Bergdahl, whereas they've got their fangs into this special forces operator that did a great job for all we know in country.
Yeah.
And so it's just really indicative of where we are today in our country. The mainstream media will do anything they can to divide our country and tear it down, whereas you've got a small portion of the media that is simply trying to tell the truth and trying to be fair to everybody and communicate. And so that's why I think it's important that Daily Caller and Fox News and One America and all of those that try to get the stories out there that are being suppressed by the mainstream media. And Manning was a traitor, Bo Bergdahl was a deserter, and Golsteyn was a great American warfighter on the ground that led his A-team. And whether or not he did anything wrong, we'll find out. But
yeah.
the Army concluded that it wasn't sufficient to prosecute him back in 2011. So I'm not sure why we're back here again.
Yeah, and like I said, they're so quick to jump to conclusions, and there are some who really just want to label him as a cold-blooded killer without even considering the facts or waiting for all the facts to be revealed.
They want him to be, and they especially want him to be now that President Trump has sort of weighed in. They want Trump to fail. They want the country to fail. They want the country to fail under President Trump in a big way. They want everything to burn to the ground so they can say, I told you so, and they want to throw the baby out with the bathwater on our Constitution and everything.
And if Golsteyn is convicted, do you think this will hurt morale among military men and women?
Well, I think it depends on the facts, Stephanie. I think if it's clear that he held a pistol to a guy's head who was handcuffed and shot him, then that's one thing. Then I think there's rules that apply to that, and it would hurt morale if he was not properly processed through the judicial system. If he released the guy at the front gate and 20 minutes later goes out on a patrol, and this guy and a bunch of his cronies that he's linked up with come ambling through the patrol,